welcome Lev Pikman and Alexey Firsh.
Today we are going to share with you some of our sweetest APT research insights that we recently just published in the form of our private reports for Kaspersky threat intelligence portal. And it will be basically about Android espionage campaign, name it PhantomLance, targeting victims in Southeast Asia. And what is more interesting, it regularly hits Google Play official market. And as it usually happens, this research has started from a very, very small point. And during investigation, we have uncovered a long-term operation, which is active since at least 2016. But at first, here are the very few words about us. My name is Alexey Firsh. I'm security researcher at Kaspersky Great Unit. I joined the company in 2016, and since the first day of my work, my main area of expertise belongs to mobile APT researches. Actually, mobile in this case means everything but Windows, mostly Android, iOS, and even macOS. And today here with me, my colleague Lev Pikman. How are you doing, Lev?
Thank you, Alexey. I'm doing fine, and let me introduce myself. I have been working in the company since early 2017, starting as an intern, and then advanced into a position of a malware analyst. I mainly focus on Android security issues, mostly it's all sorts of malware and potentially unwanted applications. But it also includes research in Android security ecosystem.
So back to our story. In July 2019, security comp Dr. Webb reported on a spyware sample in Google Play. It mimics some OpenGL app, not so much more additional information here, but these guys, they are friends of mine, so we discussed this case with a couple of beers and confirmed that it looks very attractive to deeper research, because this is not what you expect from Google Play malware. I mean, sophistication level, its behavior, all of these completely unsimilar to the common Trojans usually uploaded to the market to steal victims' money or show various advertisements. So we started from a quick research, deployed our detection systems, monitors, and after some time of waiting, we were lucky enough to catch another sample in Google Play. And as you can see, our sample has a lot of similarities with the previously reported one. Even encrypted strings are the same, but with only one but big difference. The first sample is a packet with a custom packing technique. So what you actually see on the left side of your screen is actually already unpacked payload, while the second one represents a raw payload, which is not packet at all. And it's a little bit confusion because the packet malicious payload seems to be a feature to avoid some of the possible Google Play filters. And at this point, we already knew that it somehow could be related to a persistent actor with some specific targets, because they at least twice hits Google Play with the spyware apps. And moreover, we observe a lack of installations, these apps. And these guys, they didn't promote these apps to the market top ratings to get more installations, like Joker Trojan, for example. So it sounds like there should be much more samples and actor activities to uncover. So we started to search for more samples using our arsenal of tools, deploying our signatures, YARA rules, etc., etc. And correct me if I'm wrong, Lev, but we found dozens of different samples across the whole timeline.
There are several versions of PhantomLance samples, and now let me describe the difference between these versions. During the research, we divided found samples into several versions depending on the techniques they used to infiltrate into users' devices. It's important to note, though, that we made the numbering by ourselves, and version numbers don't fully correlate with the chronological order of appearance in the wild. The first version is just a clear PhantomLance payload that doesn't drop anything at all. It uses straightforward encryption on CNC addresses and other sensitive strings. It has a malicious payload APK in an encrypted file in the sets directory, and it is decrypted by the first stage executable with an AES algorithm. The decryption key is located in the first bytes of an encrypted payload, and after the decryption, payload looks like the bottom picture. You can see that there are some strings in the file header, and they are used to make further reflection calls to the payload executable. The third version seems to be the most complex one in terms of payload dropping. The main difference of this version is that payload is split into several encrypted parts, and these parts are located in the assets folder along with the config file, which describes how to decrypt them. I won't dig into the details since this version seems to be abandoned. There is also a version 2.1, the chronologically newest one. It uses an interesting technique to infiltrate into users' devices. They introduce a matryoshka-like payload drop-in system. Let me explain that to you. There is a PhantomLance sample of this version, which pretends to be a simple call recorder, but it is also shipped with an encrypted payload. In order to decrypt it, application requests an AES decryption key from its Firebase server, and after the decryption obviously executes the payload. The decrypted payload is itself an APK, which also has a strange file called data in its assets. That asset turns out to be a third-level payload that is encrypted with a super sophisticated scheme. You can see it on the slides. After implementing the decryption algorithm for the twice-nested payload, we get a third-stage APK that appears to be a typical PhantomLance payload. A cool feature that is used by this payload APK is how it gets permissions, which are necessary for the malware to work properly. PhantomLance payloads did not explicitly ask for several dangerous permissions, which were nevertheless used in the applications. And after some research, we were able to discover that these samples introduce a completely new malicious technique that we haven't seen anywhere before. It's really interesting. So if root privileges are accessible on the device, the app declares itself as a system app, and hence it gets access to private system permissions. After the procedure, malware uses reflection calls to an undocumented API function to get desirable permissions without any user interaction. As we can see, there are several versions of this malware. But what is the point of this variety, and why don't they just make one? Why are there so many, Alexey?
Well, that's a pretty good question. But summarizing all these complicated technical details, we see that all payloads across the different versions share a similar code structure. So we think that this version diversity was made in an attempt to bypass marketplaces protection, and they succeeded. Even the least sophisticated version was accepted to app stores. So in a nutshell, malware provides threat actors with the sensitive data from the infected device, allowing them to execute shell commands and additional payloads, making malware features much more flexible. For example, based on the first get-read device information, attackers could send a specific payload suited for this specific version of Android. So there's no need to include the whole exploit kit into the initial malware. But all these features would be absolutely useless if there is no way to deliver them on user devices. So how threat actors solve this problem, Lev?
Well, in this area, they worked hard as well. The main spreading vector used by the threat actor is distributing malware on various marketplaces. And apart from the browser turbo reported to Google and OpenGL reported by Dr. Web, we observed numerous tracks indicating that many malicious applications have been deployed on Google Play in the past and are now removed. Moreover, we found multiple third-party marketplaces that, unlike Google Play, still host malicious applications. For example, Browser Turbo is still present on APK Pure. We tried to gather some information about applications from Google Play, and after some Googling, we found a bunch of GitHub accounts that were related to the developers of these apps. Almost in every case of malware deployment, threat actors tried to build a fake developer profile by creating GitHub accounts that contained only fake EULA. For example, you can see how App Browser Cleaner uses these tactics. There is a related GitHub account with the same nickname as on Google Play, registered in October 2019. It has only one repository with a single file describing some kind of privacy policy or EULA. And we think that the main reason why these accounts were created in the first place is to add a background story to the developers, making them look more legitimate for moderators of marketplaces. And as we know, popular marketplaces claim to not just check the authority of the publisher, but what is more important, the code. And they would definitely see all these payloads and drop-in snippets, right? Well, the fact is that PhantomLance didn't ship all these payloads with an app when uploading to marketplaces. Let me explain how they infiltrated into the phones then. During our investigation, we spotted a certain tactic, often used to distribute malware. The first versions of an application uploaded to marketplaces didn't contain any malicious code at all, and they were obviously accepted because they didn't look suspicious. But with the following updates, they received both malicious payloads and a code to drop and execute these payloads. For example, this behavior can be seen for the application AdSkipper on APK Pure, which claims to be an ad blocker. As you can see in the updates log, the first version of the app was uploaded somewhere around August the 8th of 2018. The first version is roughly 1 megabyte in size, and it is actually a clean app. But 4 days later, application got an update and vastly increased in size to 2.5 megabytes. This is due to the fact that this version now has a payload and, of course, a dropper for it. As you can see, the updated code base has been significantly increased. It received several classes that are responsible for malicious functionality. And not to mention a drop-in snippet, which decrypts the payload and executes it. And funnily enough, AdSkipper claims to be a protector for your device and states that it can reduce the risk of malware infection. Well, at least it's 100% free, thanks for that. But let's get back to the topic. We can see that threat actors developed a really complex malware and spiced it up with an interesting spreading tactic. And a lot of work obviously has been put in this campaign. That raises an obvious question. Who is the powerful threat actor? Where is the truth, Alexey?
The truth is still out there, my friends. We started to investigate who could be behind this campaign because it cannot be just yet another Android malware at this point. And one of the first points that attract our attention during infrastructure analysis is that domains registered in December 2015 are still active. And a few months ago, when I checked this domain, it should have expired in a few weeks. So I made the reminder in order to synhol it. But unfortunately, a few days right before the day X, we noticed that they have extended it. And the same for other expired domains. They were extended one by one. And this was a kind of an indicator of a long-term actor who maintained his infrastructure for almost 5 years already. In our attempts to uncover main actor interests, we checked our detection statistic. And unfortunately, due to the chosen distribution vector in publicly available application stores, there's a high probability of collateral infections. So we just cannot confirm anything useful this way. But even at this point, we spotted Vietnam as one of the top countries by number of possible victims. Failing with our previous approach, it's okay, shit happens. We analyzed what malicious applications mimic for. And this was kind of a bingo moment because apart from the common luring applications such as cleaners, updaters, tune-up utilities, there are some specific ones pointed to Vietnamese-speaking individuals. One of them, as you can see, provides some information about nearest churches in Vietnam. And another one mimic to Vietnamese news media Teen 247. And such apps reveals a specific actor interest in Vietnam residents. So, of course, based on these first clues, we decided to check for possible relations with Ocean Lotus Group. And according to our threat intelligence portal, Ocean Lotus is the name given to a suspected South Asia actor who operated since at least 2013. It was able to perform some very sophisticated and extremely widespread mass digital surveillance. They successfully conducted massive watering hole campaigns by compromising hundreds of websites. So Ocean Lotus targets many different sectors with a focus on government and military organization in Southeast Asia, as well as journalists, dissidents, and activists in Vietnam. Now you can fully understand why we started to review all known Ocean Lotus activities. So Lev, buddy, could you please mention the first one in our checklist?
Yeah, of course. The first one in our checklist is a report published last year by Anti-Labs, in which they described an Android malware campaign that is related to Ocean Lotus APT group. We checked provided indicators with information from our telemetry, and we found that the very first tracks of these samples date back to December 2014, with the latest observed in the wild activity in 2017. So it appears to be inactive at the moment. It's important to note that according to our statistic, the majority of users affected by this campaign was located in Vietnam. with an exception of a very few individuals located in China. Some of the apps have user interface only in Vietnamese, and also it's worth to mention that the distribution vector is very similar to the one used in PhantomLance campaigns, deploying malware on various third-party apps, including Vietnamese ones.
Yeah, but the most interesting part has started when we compared these samples with the PhantomLance. We were able to make this awesome comparison thanks to the only unobfuscated PhantomLance sample, which is probably kind of developer version that somehow leaked to public. And we can see actual names and strings given by developer. And despite the multiple differences, we observe a similar pattern used during malware implementation. These overlapped classes look quite similar and have the same functionality. And apart from the code pattern, there are also a lot of specific code similarities. I don't want to mention all of them, obviously, so you can check it yourself. But there is a lot of them, same classes and methods names, same log outputs. And finally, using our malware attribution engine, we can see that the PhantomLance payloads are at least 20% similar to the ones from this old Android campaign reported as Ocean Lotus. The second big overlap was discovered while we compared PhantomLance infrastructure with the ones considered as Ocean Lotus. The thing is that every PhantomLance sample used only subdomains as C2, while most of the parent domains do not have their own IP resolution. So we checked ones that did have it and found out that almost all of them resolved to the same IP address. And this IP belongs to DigitalOcean cloud provider. And according to the main tools, it hosted more than 100 of different domains. And checking this IP in our PDNS database reveals a few tens of legitimate websites, already mentioned PhantomLance domains, and 2 more interesting overlaps with the known Ocean Lotus infrastructure. This one, for example, is a previously known domain used as C2 by Windows backdoors reported by Palo Alto. And the second one, according to privately received information from our partners, related to Ocean Lotus as well. And finally, we tried to compare PhantomLance with the previously reported backdoors for macOS, considered in the industry as Ocean Lotus. There's a lot of public reports from ESET, from Trend Micro, if I'm not mistaken. Note that it's really hard to compare malware implemented for 2 completely different platforms, since obviously 2 different programming languages were used. However, during analysis of the macOS payload dated early 2018, we were able to catch a few minor tracks of previously described code pattern, which was used in Android malware. In particular, out of 7 main classes, there are 3 with the same names and similar functionality. Another notable attribution token that does not directly related to macOS backdoors, but applies for most of Ocean Lotus malware across different platforms, is usage of 3 different C2 servers by each sample, which is mostly subdomains. So now the truth is much more closer. We conducted a complete analysis of previous campaigns and can say that we see a 3 CNC servers used by each sample across PhantomLance and different campaigns considered as Ocean Lotus. We identify the code pattern most likely used above in Android campaigns and macOS. There is also a direct code similarities between old Android campaign and PhantomLance. And finally, we observed infrastructure overlap with the Windows backdoors. All these collected clues, as well as actor interest in targets located in Vietnam, gives us medium confidence to attribute the PhantomLance campaign to Ocean Lotus Group. Now it's the right time for some final words. If you still remember, on one hand, we have a PhantomLance, and on the other hand, old Android campaign reported by Anti-Labs. So based on its chronological appearance, we consider that the second one is actually a previous campaign conducted by Ocean Lotus, and PhantomLance is its successor, which has been active since 2016. In other words, we are able to see an entire evolution of Android activity operated for almost 6 years already. And of course, such wide-scale research would have been absolutely impossible without help of our partners, as well as other companies who somehow investigated on Ocean Lotus activities. Special thanks to them.
How would you rank Ocean Lotus compared to other APT groups in the region? Would you say they're better? Would you say they're worse? How would you describe their OPSEC based on the research you've done?
Well, from my point of view, these guys, they are pretty good at OPSEC. As usual, they try to not use the same keys, encryption keys. They try to use separate infrastructure pieces. They're really good at OPSEC comparing they're really good as usual. Let's say that.
And the last question from the audience, if you can quickly, very briefly talk about the infrastructure overlap from PhantomLance and other Ocean Lotus desktop campaigns.
It overlap on the slides. We mentioned it. The thing is that tens of the domains used as C2 by PhantomLance resolve to the same IP address which resolved the domains from older desktop campaigns.